Ever wondered what it was actually like to fight in a medieval battle? Not the movie version where everyone wears spotless armor, no one ever trips, and apparently swords never get stuck in someone's ribcage. We're talking about the real thing. Mud, panic, screaming, and the constant possibility of soiling yourself in front of a horse. We're talking real medieval combat, the kind where your sword breaks on the first swing, your boots are filled with someone else's blood, and your main strategy is trying not to get trampled by a sweaty guy named Bartholomew who hasn't bathed since last harvest. You're not a knight. You're not special. You're a terrified peasant with a dented helmet, half a boot, and a spear you've held exactly once before today. So grab a pillow, maybe a fainting couch, and prepare to be disillusioned, because we're peeling back the myth of chivalry and diving headfirst into the mud, the blood, and the historical body odor. And hey, before the arrows start flying, go ahead and subscribe. You'll need something to listen to while rethinking your romantic notions of swords and honor. So, here's the good news. You've been chosen to serve your kingdom. The bad news? You were chosen because the baker's son faked a limp and the constable believed him. Now you're holding a spear that feels suspiciously like a broomstick, and your feet smell like old cheese left in a plague house. Welcome to conscription. You are now, by some miracle of low expectations, a medieval soldier. No one asks if you've fought before. No one cares. Your training consists of watching a man named Ulrich stab a hay bale with the same energy a drunkard swats flies, while shouting things like "glory" and "for the crown" in a voice that suggests he may be crying inside. It's inspiring in the way watching your uncle dance at a wedding is inspiring, mostly confusing, and a little sad. The official war notice was nailed to the church door. You didn't read it because, surprise, you can't read. All you know is the Lord wants bodies, and yours is statistically available. There's talk of foreign enemies, family honor, and defending the realm. In practice, it means walking for days until your toes rot off and stabbing strangers who look just as terrified as you. You're issued armor. By armor, we mean a stiff leather vest that once belonged to someone who definitely died in it. You also get a helmet that's clearly just an upside-down cooking pot with a strap. It pinches your scalp, rattles when you breathe, and smells like cabbage. Your entire defense strategy now rests on don't fall too hard. Your boots are technically boots in the same way a rat is technically a pet. They're more whole than leather, soaked from yesterday's rain and today's mistakes. You stuff them with straw to avoid blisters, which works right up until you step on something sharp and screams so loud a nearby goat runs away. Meals are simple: boiled weeds, mystery broth, and bread that doubles as a weapon. You're told it's good for strength. You suspect it's good for parasites. You chew anyway, because starvation is the only thing worse than this porridge-flavored betrayal. Your stomach grumbles with regret and mild rage. Your fellow recruits are exactly what you'd expect. A half-blind shepherd who thinks every problem can be solved by yelling at it. A monk with a twitchy eye and a suspiciously sharp walking stick. And a man named Joff who once punched a chicken to death. These are your comrades. These are the men you will bleed with. Drills are chaos. You swing sticks at burlap sacks while a captain screams at you about formation and discipline. Two concepts no one fully understands. Someone tries to march in a straight line and ends up in a bush. You accidentally stab yourself with your own spear. The captain sighs, writes something down, probably your name on a death list. You ask about pay. The officer laughs so hard he wheezes. He says something about serving the greater good and hands you half a coin and a pat on the shoulder. You do the math. That coin might buy you a turnip. A small one, if you don't get robbed on the way to market. Sleeping arrangements are rustic. 50 men in a barn with one small fire, 3 blankets, and a goat no one invited. The snoring sounds like a chorus of dying bagpipes. The goat chews on someone's sock. The smell is a potent mix of feet, mildew, and crushed dreams. You lie awake wondering if dying in battle might be the better option. There's no bath. Hygiene is theoretical. You wash your face in a puddle and call it luxury. Lice move in. Fleas set up shop. You itch constantly and learn to scratch without making eye contact. You bond with your neighbors over shared misery and mutual scabies. Camaraderie through discomfort. A priest visits to bless the regiment. He mutters something about divine purpose, then blesses your helmet with holy water. You're pretty sure it's just pond water. It drips into your ear and makes you question both theology and basic hygiene. Still, you nod solemnly, because it's the only moment of peace you've had in days. Someone dies during training. A spear through the foot gone wrong. No ceremony, just a quick prayer and a shovel. You're told it builds character. You're not sure whose, since the dead guy's character seems very much unbuilt at the moment. You whisper your own name into the night, just in case the gods are listening. Morale is low, then lower, then somewhere below ground with the worms. The officers shout about duty, but no one listens anymore. You clean your spear, count your remaining toes, and wonder if running away is still an option. You hear deserters get their ears cut off. You like your ears. You stay. You try to imagine glory, the kind sung in songs, painted in murals, told by firelight. But all you can see is mud, hunger, and a man crying over spilled stew. You squint at the horizon, but the future looks a lot like this. Itchy, cold, and extremely unglamorous. There's a rumor the enemy has crossbows. Someone faints. Another asks if crossbows are legal. The captain responds by throwing a rock and shouting, "War isn't fair." Everyone nods. It's the first true thing anyone's said all week. You get a banner. It's a stick with a faded rag tied to it. No one knows what it means. You wave it anyway because it's something to do. You imagine the enemy has better banners, with dragons or lions or at least something recognizable. Yours looks like a dish rag used to mop up ale. As battle day approaches, the camp buzzes with nervous energy. Not excitement, just that twitchy, pre-trauma anxiety where everyone pretends to be fine. You laugh too loud at a joke that wasn't funny. Your fingers shake. Your bowels stage a protest. It's going to be a great day. You get your final gear inspection. Your spear's crooked, your helmet's cracked, and your left boot is now just a sock. The officer says, "Looks good." You're reassured and also horrified. You realize the bar for survival has never been lower. Someone gives you a speech about courage. You barely hear it over the sound of your own teeth chattering. The speech ends with, "Make your ancestors proud." You suspect your ancestors would prefer you alive, possibly with all your limbs. You fall asleep that night knowing tomorrow could be your last. You hug your spear like a comfort blanket and dream of simpler times, when the worst thing you had to worry about was a spoiled turnip or a leaky roof. You whisper a prayer to no one in particular, just in case. And when the morning bell rings and the boots start marching, you rise. Not because you're brave, not because you believe in the cause, but because someone is shouting at you, and you've learned that not moving gets you slapped. You are now a soldier, or at least something that loosely resembles one. You thought conscription was bad? That was just the welcome party. Now let's talk about why you're actually here. And no, you didn't get a choice. Because in the Middle Ages, the side you fight for isn't about loyalty or strategy. It's about who owns the land your cow poops on. You'd think war starts with some big decision. A council meeting, a passionate speech, a kingdom-wide vote maybe. Spoiler alert, you don't get to choose sides. Sides choose you. Usually based on your birth, your landlord's mood, or which local noble insulted which royal cousin at a wedding 3 summers ago. Your loyalty is assumed the same way your ability to farm turnips was assumed at birth. You don't get a pamphlet outlining your options. You get a man with a scroll, yelling declarations in the market square while holding a sword that looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the last plague. The king, your king, allegedly, has declared war. Why? Hard to say. The rumors range from land disputes to an insult about someone's beard. You don't ask questions because asking questions gets you labeled troublesome, and troublesome people tend to be found mysteriously drowned in barrels of ale. Your lord tells you the enemy is evil, godless, and probably smells bad. Conveniently, their lord is saying the same thing about you. You wonder if, across the river, some equally filthy peasant is asking the same question. Why am I holding a weapon and not a spoon? You don't meet the enemy in strategy meetings or parliaments. You meet them in fields, muddy, horse-trampled fields, where you scream at each other in different accents and hope you're stabbing the right color of tunic. Spoiler, you won't always. One day you're a farmer or blacksmith or enthusiastic loaf eater. The next, you're part of a political scheme involving treaties, inheritances, and 3 people named Edward. The reasons are complicated. Your role isn't. You are meat with opinions no one asked for. When you were conscripted, they didn't give you a cause. They gave you a name to hate and a direction to march. They said for glory, with such dead eyes it sounded like a curse. You nodded, because that's what you do when someone with a sword gives directions. There are banners. Oh, how there are banners. Each one an explosion of lions, dragons, eagles, and indecipherable family crests that mostly scream, "My ancestors were really into gold thread." Yours is a faded cloth that might have once been red or possibly soup-stained beige. You hold it anyway, because symbols matter, apparently. The nobles, meanwhile, sit on horseback in fancy armor polished to a mirror shine. They look magnificent. They look untouched, because they are. Their job is to inspire. Your job is to bleed while inspired. At night by the fire, the stories change depending on who's complaining. Their king broke the truce. Ours claimed land that's not his. Their banners mocked our goats. The truth is buried somewhere under layers of pride, revenge, and confusing genealogy. You ask an older soldier what the war's really about. He grunts, spits, and says, "Someone wanted to prove they're the bigger man." Then he laughs so hard he dislocates his shoulder. No one helps him. You stare into the fire and realize you may die because 2 cousins had an argument at a tournament. The enemy isn't demons or monsters. They're people like you. Just dirtier, if possible, and wearing different colors. Some of them even speak your language, just with weird vowels. But once the swords come out, all nuance disappears. A man from your village switched sides, claimed he liked their bread better. He was executed before anyone could ask for the recipe. Now his name is a curse word. You're told loyalty is sacred. You wonder if sacred things always end with heads on spikes. There's a song the troops sing. It rhymes honor with goner and king with suffering. It's oddly catchy. You hum it while digging latrines. Every now and then, someone adds a new verse about another noble's mistress or an army cook's suspicious stew. The higher-ups insist you hate the enemy. They say things like savages and barbarians while sipping imported wine. You try to picture your enemy as a monster, but your imagination keeps supplying a tired face, a limp, and a missing boot. You suspect you might have more in common than not. Sometimes prisoners are brought in. You're told not to talk to them, but you listen anyway. Their stories are identical to yours. Conscripted, confused, tired, itchy. One says his lord swore the war would be over by harvest. You both laugh, but not really. A cleric gives a sermon about the righteousness of your cause. He says God is on your side. You want to ask how God picks sides when both armies claim him like a prize pig. But the last man who asked got assigned latrine duty in the rain. Forever. You write a letter home. You don't mention the cause. You write about the mud, the food, the man next to you who smells like old socks and despair. You ask if the goats are still alive. You don't ask why you're fighting. There's no answer you want to hear. Every time someone dies, the chaplain says, he gave his life for the realm. You wonder if the realm will give something back. So far, all it's given is lice, calluses, and a deep-seated distrust of anyone wearing fur. A noble dies. There's a feast, trumpets, mourning banners, poetry. When 5 peasants die, someone shrugs and says, "War's war." You try not to throw your bowl of pottage in his face, mostly because you're still kind of hungry. The lines between sides blur the longer the war drags on. Desertions rise. People start trading with the enemy at night. Salt, bread, stories. You're not supposed to, but hunger beats patriotism every time. Your side wins a skirmish. Cheers erupt, morale surges, until someone realizes the village you reclaimed was already burned. The spoils, a half-dead chicken and a wheelbarrow of manure. You name the chicken Victory. It dies the next day. You hear talk of peace talks, hushed, cautious, nothing certain. But just the mention makes everyone quieter. You realize how much you've forgotten how silence feels. Like possibility, or maybe like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then a new decree arrives, a new battle, a new enemy. Apparently the old enemy signed a truce, so now we're fighting their allies, who are now our enemies because logic has officially retired. You don't care anymore. Not really. You swing your weapon because it's what you do, because not doing it means someone else does it to you. You've stopped counting the dead. You've stopped remembering names. At some point, your side wins, you think. Or maybe the other side just stopped showing up. Either way, you're told it's over. You walk home slower than you marched out, lighter by a few teeth and heavier with memory. No one asks what it was about. No one explains what you won. You're just back, changed, missing something invisible but permanent. You look at the land you defended and wonder if it ever noticed. So now you're officially someone's expendable pawn. Congratulations. Time to get ready for battle, by which we mean panicking, praying, and fashioning a weapon out of a gardening tool you once used to dig up turnips. In movies, preparing for battle means sharpening swords in dramatic candlelight, strapping on shining armor in slow motion, and making steely eye contact with your comrades before delivering a rousing speech about honor. In reality, preparing for a medieval battle feels more like a series of bad life choices, stitched together with fear sweat. The morning of your first battle begins with someone shouting, "Wake up, maggots," before promptly tripping over a sleeping goat. You sit up so fast, your head smashes into the low barn ceiling. Your first injury of the day. A concussion, probably. A great omen. Breakfast is a cold lump of something brown that may once have been oats and may currently be a rat nest. You chew slowly, pretending it's food. Someone jokes about this being your last meal, and then no one laughs, because it might be. Your gear is waiting. Sort of. Your helmet is now home to 3 spiders and something you hope is dead. Your mail shirt weighs more than your will to live and smells like it was buried next to a septic tank. Your sword, if you're lucky enough to have one, looks like it lost a duel with a butter churn. There's a man sharpening a spoon, not metaphorically, a literal spoon. He says it's for just in case, You decide not to ask. Everyone's coping in their own way. Another soldier is muttering prayers in 3 languages while aggressively tying and retying his boots. Again, coping. You try to relieve yourself before marching out, but your bowels have entered full rebellion mode. You sit over a log, staring into the distance, praying for movement that never comes. It's amazing what terror does to your digestive system. You stand up heavier than you should be. Officers bark orders like they're herding cats with emotional trauma. Form a line. Tighten your belt. Stop crying. No, not you. You're fine. The guy next to you who's dry heaving into his helmet needs a moment. His name is probably Gregor. They're all Gregor. Someone starts humming a war chant. It's meant to be stirring. It sounds like a dirge sung by a cow in heat. Still, it catches on. Pretty soon the line is singing in low, terrified voices. It's not beautiful. It is, however, unified in desperation. You're told to pack light, so you bring a hunk of stale bread, a wooden flask of warm beer, a cloth with a saint's face drawn on it, poorly, and a knife so dull it might be safer to throw insults instead. You're ready for war, assuming war is allergic to mediocrity. One man has polished his armor so much you can see your terrified reflection in it. You ask where he got real plate armor. He says inheritance. You ask if it worked for the last guy. He says no. Conversation ends. There's always one overachiever who treats battle prep like a fashion show. He's got feathers in his helmet, a sash, maybe even a matching tunic. Everyone hates him immediately. You don't know his name, but if this were a storybook, he'd die in the first 5 minutes. You hold on to that. You do push-ups. Not because it helps, but because the captain insists. Someone collapses after 3. Another pretends to be dead to get out of it. He's dragged away, screaming. You keep going, your arms shaking, your mind already writing goodbye letters to your toes. Weapon inspection is a joke. Your spear is bent. Your shield is cracked. Your dagger is made of bone. The quartermaster shrugs and says, "You'll figure it out?" You nod solemnly, wondering if he means battle tactics or funeral arrangements. You try to remember the training. Stab forward. Shield up. Don't panic. Then you remember the training lasted 2 afternoons and involved more yelling than technique. The only thing you've truly mastered is the ability to look busy while terrified. A priest arrives with holy water and a bucket of vague encouragement. He talks about sacrifice and valor. No one listens. You stare at his robes and wonder how clean they are. You consider asking for a confession, not because of your sins, but because it might buy you 5 minutes alone. There's a pep talk. Of course there is. The captain shouts about glory, country, and honor. Half the words are drowned out by coughing and goat noises. You try to look inspired. It comes off as gas pain. Close enough. Your battle buddy, some kid named Aldrich, asks what you're going to do if you make it home. You say, "Sleep, forever." He nods like it's the smartest thing he's ever heard. Then he gives you a piece of dried meat and says, "For luck." You don't ask what animal it came from. You just nod back. There's armor fitting, if you can call it that. You're strapped into rusted rings of iron that pinch your skin and weigh as much as a full-grown sheep. You wobble when you walk and fall over trying to scratch your back. The blacksmith tells you, "If you can't move fast, just don't die." Great advice. Someone starts throwing up behind the stables. You hear it for a full minute, then silence, then a polite cough. You glance over. He's fine, pale, trembling, and probably rethinking every life choice. But fine. Your boots are held together with hope and string. You consider praying over them. Then you remember the last guy who prayed tripped over a rock and dislocated both knees. You pat your boots once for good luck, then stop making eye contact with heaven. When the horn sounds, you jump. Everyone does. You weren't ready. No one was. You form ranks, more out of peer pressure than confidence. Your legs feel like pudding. Your hands grip your weapon like it's both the solution and the problem. The noble arrives. He's on a pristine horse wearing armor so clean it glows. He gives a speech about duty. It's dramatic. You don't hear a word because you're too distracted by the fact that his horse is relieving itself mid-speech. Symbolic, probably. You are marched to the edge of the field. You can't see the enemy yet, just a horizon of possibilities, none of them good. A bird cries overhead. Someone says it's a sign. Another says it's just a bird. Either way, you all stare at it like it has answers. Your armpits itch, your teeth hurt, your chest is tight. You suddenly remember a pie from home. It has nothing to do with battle, but it's a better thought than, I might get disemboweled in the next hour. One guy sings, another prays. You stand there, staring straight ahead, trying not to cry, or fart, or run. All options feel reasonable, and just like that, you're ready. Not trained, not prepared, not confident, but dressed in itchy metal, holding a sharp stick, standing in a line with 50 other doomed souls who also didn't choose this life. Ready, sort of. You've prepped, sort of. You're terrified, definitely, but maybe the armor will help. Let's take a closer look at your so-called protection, which is about as comforting as a damp sock full of regrets. Let's get something straight. When people think medieval warfare, they picture glorious knights clanking around in shimmering plate armor, looking like walking silver gods with the body odor of a banquet. That's adorable. For you? Not so much. You're wearing what can only be described as a suggestion of protection. Your armor, if you can call it that, is a leather jerkin. Basically a vest made from the hide of an animal that died confused and possibly angry. It's stiff, it creaks when you move, and it smells like a combination of mildew and regret. The padding underneath? Stuffed with straw, because nothing says ready for battle like walking around like a scarecrow in a bar fight. The noble's son, on the other hand, looks like he just stepped off the cover of medieval GQ. Polished steel breastplate, engraved gauntlets, a helmet with actual feathers. Feathers. Meanwhile, you've tied a rag around your head to keep the lice from escaping into your eyes. Chainmail sounds fancy, until you wear it. It's hundreds of tiny metal rings sewn together by someone who hated you personally. It weighs more than your cousin Gregor, and it distributes that weight evenly across your misery. Every step feels like a full-body hug from a damp iron snake. And don't forget the heat. You will die of heat stroke before anyone stabs you. Chainmail doesn't breathe. It traps every ounce of body warmth and triples it. Sweat runs down your spine like it's late for a meeting. Your armpits become swamps. The inside of your shirt feels like a slow-cooking stew made from pain and moisture. You try lifting your arms. Mistake. Every link pulls against your shoulders, like a blacksmith is playing tug-of-war with your joints. You rotate your neck. Crack. That wasn't the mail. That was your last functioning vertebra. Rich knights have visors and fancy mechanisms that let them breathe and see. Yours is basically a salad bowl with holes punched into it. Your field of vision is about 6 inches, which means your main combat tactic is walk in a direction and pray it's not toward a wall. Did we mention padding? Oh yes, you need padding underneath the mail. But you don't have padding. You have an old tunic someone left on a corpse 3 weeks ago. It's torn, blood-stained, and technically counts as soft only because it's not on fire. You try to sit down. Your armor folds like a disappointed parent. You can't bend your knees properly, and your thighs are chafing like two sandpaper demons locked in a grudge match. You long for the sweet release of nudity, not for comfort, just for dignity. Shoes. Let's talk about those elegant leather boots the nobles wear. Handmade, stitched with care, lined with fur. Yours? Two mismatched slabs of hide tied with rope. You step on a rock and experience instant spiritual transformation. You are now one with the pain. The captain tells you to polish your armor. You look at the rust, dents, and suspicious stain near the chest. You use straw. It helps, not with the shine, just with managing your expectations. You hear armor clanking and turn around. It's the knight again. His gear gleams. You blink and see your reflection, sweaty, wide-eyed, and questioning every decision that led to this moment. He smiles. His teeth are white. You wonder what toothpaste is and how he found it in 1347. Someone asks if armor actually works. The blacksmith grunts and says, "Depends what hits you." Comforting. Very specific. You imagine being struck with a mace and feeling every bone in your arm introduce itself to gravity. Let's talk about helmets. Theirs fit snug, secure, elegant. Yours wobbles like a pot on a drunk man's head. It rattles when you move. It slides into your eyes at crucial moments. And the chin strap? Gone. Replaced by a piece of twine that smells like goat pee and betrayal. You notice that after half a mile of marching, your neck is sore, your shoulders are spasming, and your lower back has decided to go on strike. You look to the captain. He says, "That's normal." You consider mutiny. Silently. In battle drills, your shield is a wooden plank with a leather strap. It splinters when someone hits it too hard. You ask for a better one. The quartermaster laughs and says, "You're not important enough to block things." Encouraging. By midday, your armor has rubbed 3 new holes into your skin. One on your chest, one under your arm, and one somewhere so private you don't want to talk about it. You're bleeding and sweating simultaneously. Congratulations, you are soup. Water breaks are rare, and when they happen, you lift your helmet and pour the water into your face. Except the water hits the inside rim and splashes directly into your crotch. You're now wet, uncomfortable, and weirdly self-conscious. There's always someone who customizes their gear, paints a snake on their shield, dyes their armor black, ties bones into their belt like some kind of discount barbarian. You want to roll your eyes, but you can't. Your helmet's in the way. Your mail snags on everything. Tent ropes, bushes, other soldiers. At one point you trip and pull down half the supply tent. The quartermaster yells at you. You cry. A little. On the inside. Your gloves are too big. You try to hold your weapon, but it keeps slipping. You take the gloves off. Your palms blister in 5 minutes. Now you can't hold anything without wincing like a nobleman with a paper cut. The knight rides past you again. His armor clicks gently, like music. His horse looks fed, brushed, serene. You look down at your own legs, covered in mud, ankles swollen, one sock missing. You are not the hero of this story. You ask if there's any lighter armor. The answer is yes, but it's called dying in your tunic. It's light, breezy, and only slightly better than nothing. It's what half your squad will be wearing tomorrow, and what half of them won't be wearing home. At the end of the day, you try to take off your armor. It clings to you like an angry ex. Every strap is stuck, every buckle rusted. You fall over twice trying to get it off. Finally, you lay back on the ground and ask the sky to smite you. It doesn't. You manage to peel it off, inch by inch. Your body steams in the cold air. You smell like disappointment and mildew. You want to wash, but the only water is downstream from the latrine. You settle for wiping your face with a damp rag and calling it good. At night, you sleep next to your armor, partly for safety, partly because you're too tired to move it. It glints faintly in the firelight, not from polish, from grease. Possibly yours, possibly someone else's. You don't ask. You close your eyes and try to picture yourself surviving tomorrow. But all you can see is a sword swinging toward your ribs, slowed only slightly by the rusted, dented sheet metal that some optimist once called a breastplate. Sleep doesn't come easy when you know your armor is mostly decorative. You roll over. The jerkin creaks, and so do you. Turns out armor is a sweaty, chafing lie. Good news, now it's time to pick a weapon. Bad news, most of them are designed by maniacs who clearly never considered wrist safety or splinter-related fatalities. Welcome to the wonderful world of medieval weaponry, where every tool is either wildly impractical, wildly dangerous, or both. Forget Hollywood sword fights with elegant choreography and tasteful slow-mo. This is less duel of honor and more panicked bludgeoning in a muddy field while screaming and praying you don't drop your weapon or your last functioning tooth. Let's start with the sword, the poster child of medieval warfare. In paintings, it's graceful, gleaming, and wielded by men with chiseled jaws and perfect posture. In real life, it's a chunk of metal balanced poorly on a handle that gives you blisters before your opponent even arrives. It's heavy, it's unwieldy, and if you're lucky, it won't snap when you hit someone's helmet. If you're unlucky, it will, and now you're in a knife fight with half a yardstick. Not all swords are created equal, either. A rich knight might carry a longsword with ornate engravings and a grip wrapped in baby-soft leather. You're swinging a chipped iron stick that someone pried out of a corpse's cold, stiff hands and declared salvageable. Now, onto the axe. Axes are great for chopping firewood, and also excellent at making your enemies wish they stayed home. They come in all shapes. Hand axes, bearded axes, double-headed monstrosities that look like they were designed by someone with anger issues, and a blacksmith's anvil. They're brutal, effective, and about as subtle as a mule kick to the ribs. The downside? They're also wildly unbalanced. You miss one swing, and you're spinning in circles like a confused lumberjack at a rave. If you're lucky enough to hit something, congratulations, it'll probably stay hit. Axes don't slice so much as crash through. Your enemy might not bleed right away, but they'll definitely sit down and reevaluate every decision that led them to this field. Then there's the mace. Ah yes, the medieval problem solver. It's a metal club designed for one purpose: make helmets regret existing. No fancy technique required. Just swing it like you're chasing a raccoon out of your pantry. Contact results in bone crunching, bell ringing, soul departing pain. Downside? It's heavy, very heavy. After 4 swings, your arms go numb, your back spasms, and you consider a career in gardening. The flail deserves its own paragraph because whoever invented it was clearly on something. Picture this: a spiked ball on a chain, attached to a handle. Looks cool in tapestry, sure. In real life, it's a self-inflicted concussion waiting to happen. You swing it, it spins, it goes rogue. It might hit your enemy, it might hit your friend, it might hit you. The weapon equivalent of a toddler with a loaded crossbow. Now, the spear. Underrated. Under-glamorized. Incredibly practical. It's a big stick with a pointy end. Perfect for poking enemies from a distance, which is a noble goal when said enemies are charging at you screaming and wearing spikes. It's also a team player. In a group, you form a wall of jabby death. Alone? You look like a broom enthusiast at the wrong convention. But the problem with spears? Once you stab, it's stuck, and nothing ruins your day like trying to yank your weapon out of someone's ribcage while 3 other people run at you with maces. Pro tip, always have a backup, or legs fast enough to pretend you forgot your weapon at home. Let's talk bows. Archery is romanticized in stories. Elegant shots, graceful form, heroic one-liners whispered to the wind. Real life, your fingers bleed, the string slaps your arm so hard you develop a permanent bruise, and you miss 9 out of 10 shots because your target is running, zigzagging, and occasionally screaming. Also, arrows are expensive. You don't get a magical quiver. You get 6 sticks, one of which is bent, and a lecture about making every shot count. Then there's the crossbow, for those who like their murder with a side of back pain. Crossbows were powerful, terrifying, and about as fast to reload as a medieval ox cart. You get 1 shot, maybe 2, if your enemy is very polite or extremely distracted. Then you're just a guy holding a weird-looking stick and making nervous eye contact. Of course, if you're a peasant, you're probably using a club, a shovel, or, if supply was really low, a rock. And not a cool, sling-ready David vs. Goliath rock. Just something you found on the ground and hoped for the best. Bonus points if you carved a face into it and gave it a name. That's not weird. That's morale. And don't forget the dagger, also known as your last desperate hope. It's small, concealable, and really only useful when you're already in trouble. Drawing a dagger means one of 2 things. 1, you're fighting in very tight quarters, or 2, you dropped your actual weapon and are now inventing new strategies, like panic stabbing and crying. Of course, none of these weapons matter if you can't lift them. Most medieval soldiers weren't jacked bodybuilders. They were malnourished farmers with vitamin deficiencies and a dream. Holding a broadsword for more than 5 minutes feels like arm wrestling a horse. Swinging it repeatedly? That's called a fitness regimen, or a death wish. Weapon maintenance is a whole other level of stress. Blades dull, wood cracks. The blacksmith says he's overwhelmed and not fixing another peasant's bent spoon sword today. You end up sharpening your axe with a rock and a prayer. The axe still works, kind of. The prayer, less so. Now let's rank them for fun. Swords. Look great, feel awful, might get you knighted, might also dislocate your shoulder. Axes. High damage, low finesse, best used when subtlety is off the table, which it always is. Maces. For when you want to play the drums on someone's skull. Flails. Swing wildly and accept your fate. Spears. Good teamwork weapon. Terrible for solo heroics. Bows. Effective from a distance. Ineffective when someone is trying to introduce their sword to your spleen. Crossbows. Powerful, slow, great for dramatic last stands. Daggers. Technically a weapon, mostly an emotional support knife. Clubs and farm tools. Improvised. Terrifying. Symbolic of the entire medieval experience. So, when battle begins, what are you actually carrying? A dented axe, a wobbly shield, a dagger you made from a chicken bone, and the unshakable suspicion that the guy next to you might be better off fighting with his teeth. And somehow, you'll march into battle anyway. Not because you're brave, but because everyone else is moving, and you don't want to be the only one left holding a blunt rake and wondering where it all went wrong. Armed and something resembling ready, you now face the final evening before the slaughter. It's a magical time filled with anxiety, foul ale, and that special moment when your bunkmate gently sobs himself to sleep while snuggling a helmet. The sun dips below the hills like it's sneaking out of the mess it helped make. The sky turns that ominous shade of orange that says, This will not end well. You're camped in a field, surrounded by tents made from canvas and desperation. The battle is tomorrow. You know this because everyone keeps saying it in a voice halfway between dread and denial. Morale, abysmal. The ale, warm, flat, and tasting like someone strained it through a monk's sock. Food, technically. You get a bowl of stew so thin it could be classified as a beverage. It's made from roots, oats, and possibly sadness. You chew it while staring into the fire, pretending it's meat. It's not. Your companions are a rogue's gallery of regret. Next to you is Godfrey, a man who smells like onions and hasn't blinked in 15 minutes. Across the fire is Thomas, who's trying to carve a saint's face into his shield with a butter knife. It's not going well. Behind you, someone is crying. You don't ask who. Everyone cries at least once tonight. It's tradition. Conversations drift between what happens if we win, what happens if we lose, and do you think there's an afterlife or just more mud? Some laugh nervously. Some drink until they forget how to stand. Others sit in silence, staring at their weapons like they expect them to start offering advice. The captain gives a speech. It's meant to be uplifting. It mostly includes phrases like, hold the line, and honor your king, and we'll show them. No one cheers. Someone burps. Someone else mutters, we'll show them what? Our spleens? A priest walks by, offering blessings and vague metaphors about courage. He sprinkles holy water on your shield. It hisses. You pretend not to notice. Godfrey says he saw that same priest last week trying to steal a chicken. You nod. It tracks. The night air is cold and damp. Your blanket is more whole than fabric. You huddle by the fire with 20 other freezing, unwashed humans, who all collectively smell like feet, ale, and bad decisions. Every time someone shifts, the smell reconfigures into a new, equally offensive pattern. You try to sleep, but the ground is made of sharp regret and possibly rocks. Your armor digs into your back. Your helmet is now your pillow. It's cold, metal, and somehow manages to be both too small and too large at the same time. Godfrey talks in his sleep. Not words, just guttural medieval sounds like "Hrng" and "by the saints." At one point he sits up, points at nothing, and screams, "They're in the trees!" There are no trees. You make a mental note to move further away from Godfrey if you survive. Someone laughs too loudly. Everyone jumps. Tensions are high. Jokes have to be carefully tested. Start small, gauge reaction, back away if someone looks like they're about to start weeping into their bowl of turnip soup. You stare at the stars and wonder if the constellations care. Probably not. They've been watching this nonsense for centuries. You trace the shape of what you think is a bear, or maybe a cart, or possibly the holy symbol of Saint Ulrich the Confused. You remember your family. You think of your mother's bread, your father's old stories, your sister's annoying laugh. You wonder if they'll ever hear what happened to you. Probably not. Maybe you'll be listed in the village roll as presumed missing under unfortunate circumstances. A man offers to trade you his dried apple for your extra knife. You agree. The apple is mushy. The knife was bent. Neither of you win. Still, it feels like a deal. A small comfort in the middle of impending chaos. At some point, someone sings, softly, an old folk song about lost loves, dying kings, or possibly goats. It doesn't matter. The melody is familiar, haunting. A few join in, then silence again. The kind that stretches too long. The kind that wraps around your ribs and whispers, "This is real." You write a note, not a letter, just a few words on torn parchment. If found, tell Anna I tried. You tuck it into your boot, the one that isn't soaked in whatever Godfrey did in his sleep. You don't want to know. He's snoring again, aggressively. The fire dies down, the air grows colder. You shift your weight. Everything aches. Not from injury, just from existing too long in one body, one life, one endless night. Across the camp, a scout returns with news. The enemy is camped just over the hill. Close enough to smell us, probably. Someone asks if they're scared too. The scout shrugs. They look the same as us. No one knows what to do with that. There's a final inspection. Your boots, your belt, your weapon. The captain nods grimly at each. He stops at your dagger. Bit small, he says. You reply, so's my hope. He doesn't laugh. You weren't joking. A flask is passed around. It burns going down. You don't ask what it is. Could be ale, could be lamp oil. Either way, it numbs the edges. You welcome it. Edges are dangerous now. You lay back down. You dream of normal things. Fields, bread, laughter, then swords, fire, screaming. You wake up gasping. Godfrey is still asleep, holding his helmet like it's a teddy bear. You whisper a prayer, not because you're pious, just because it feels like the thing to do. You ask for strength, for mercy, for something resembling a clean pair of socks. Heaven is silent. Typical. The sky begins to pale. The first birds start singing. Idiots. They don't know what's coming. You envy them. You sit up, stretch. Everything cracks. You put your armor back on, each piece heavier than the last. It's not just the metal. It's the weight of what you know is about to happen. No one speaks. Breakfast is offered. You decline. Your stomach is somewhere near your boots, possibly still full of despair stew from last night. You look at the faces around you, pale, hollow-eyed, determined in that very specific way that only people marching toward their potential deaths can be. Godfrey finally wakes. He looks at you, bleary-eyed, and says, "Did I scream again?" You nod. He grunts. "I always do." The horn sounds. Everyone stands. The day begins. The night is over. You're still here. For now. Dawn breaks. Sort of. More like it limps in. You're hungover, haunted, and heading out. But don't expect a cinematic march of glory. What you're about to experience is 20 miles of foot pain, swamp stench, and crippling existential dread. Marching to battle sounds like it should be dramatic. You picture wind blowing through banners, drums thundering, warriors yelling something heroic in Old English. In reality, it's a long, miserable walk that smells like damp wool and disappointment. It's less epic charge and more group hike planned by people who hate fun. You start before sunrise because someone in command thinks that being sleep-deprived adds to morale. Spoiler, it doesn't. Your feet are already aching and you haven't moved more than 3 steps. You shuffle into line with the others, all of you creaking, grunting, and mumbling curses like a mobile retirement home with weapons. Your boots, if you can call them that, were designed for suffering. The soles are thinning. One is held together with a piece of twine and a desperate prayer. After 15 minutes, blisters begin to form. After 30, you're convinced you're walking on hot coals. After an hour, your feet have detached emotionally from your body. They're on strike. The pace is set by the captain's horse, who's clearly never had to wear 20 pounds of rusted armor on its knees. You trudge along behind it, dodging clumps of steaming evidence that horses do not care about troop morale. It starts to rain, because of course it does. Not enough to justify stopping, just enough to soak into your tunic and make you feel like a soggy loaf of despair. The fabric clings. Your underlayers chafe. Your armpits are now individual weather systems. Someone starts singing, badly. It's a marching tune that involves 12 verses, none of which rhyme. You join in around verse 6, because the alternative is listening to your own internal monologue, which currently includes the phrase, "This was a mistake," on repeat. You're already sweating buckets despite the rain. Your armor traps heat like a casserole dish, and every step sends waves of body odor into the atmosphere. The man in front of you smells like he bathed in garlic and wet rope. The man behind you is breathing so heavily it sounds like he's giving birth. The road is not paved. It's mud, rocks, and surprises. You slip twice, once into a puddle, once into something that used to be food, animal, or both. Each time, someone laughs. You swear vengeance. You forget by the next hill. Flatulence becomes a communal experience. No one mentions it. It's simply accepted that every fourth step might come with a musical note. You stop judging. You're part of the wind section now. The captain occasionally shouts, "Keep pace," as if anyone is intentionally falling behind. You glare at him. He's on a horse, a dry, clean, unsuffering horse. If mutiny didn't require effort, he'd be overthrown by now. You pass a field. It's quiet, peaceful. You imagine what it would be like to just lay down in it and pretend to be dead until all this blows over. You seriously consider it. The noble rides past. His armor glints. His hair is clean. He has a servant whose only job is to hand him snacks. You watch him chew something golden and flaky. You chew your lip in protest. You think you're close. You're not. You're halfway. The hill ahead is mocking you. It's the kind of hill that exists purely to remind you of your fragility. By the time you reach the top, you're gasping like a landed fish and questioning gravity. Someone twists an ankle. They try to keep going. Eventually they're carried. You try to offer sympathy, but you're too tired to fake it. You just nod and hope the same thing doesn't happen to you. Or maybe you do hope. Rest sounds incredible. A man named Bernard begins ranting about signs from the sky. He's convinced a bird pooped on him as an omen. You want to disagree, but honestly, it checks out. You reach a stream. It's cold and muddy, but you splash it on your face anyway. It helps, briefly. Then you remember this same stream probably ran past the latrines. You wipe your face on your sleeve and accept your fate. The trail forks. Someone asks which way to go. No one knows. You wait for a scout. They return with conflicting advice. You take the left path because it feels wrong and therefore probably correct. This is how decisions are made now. Marching songs return. Louder, more frantic. One involves a goat, a bucket, and a questionable moral lesson. You sing along anyway. Harmony is dead. Volume is survival. Time stretches. Your legs ache. Your back feels like it's been used as a training dummy. Your sword belt digs into your hip. You try shifting it. It makes things worse. Lunch is announced. It's not lunch. It's a piece of bread the size of a rat and just as soft. You chew it like a condemned man chews his last rites. It turns to dust halfway through. You drink beer to wash it down. It doesn't help. It's warm and vaguely fishy. A cart passes carrying extra gear. You eye it longingly. It's full of axes and helmets. You think about crawling inside. You decide against it because it's moving too fast and you're moving too slow. The weather clears for 20 minutes. Birds chirp. Someone suggests this is a good sign. They're immediately stung by a bee. We take it as confirmation. Near the end, you see smoke in the distance. The camp. Maybe the battlefield. You hope it's the camp. You fear it's not. You adjust your gear one more time and try to act brave. It comes off more as bloated. When you finally stop, it's not relief you feel. It's emptiness. Your body is still marching even though your legs aren't. You sit down, not gently, but like collapsing timber. Someone hands you a second piece of bread. You eat it without tasting. Your socks are soaked. Your boots are worse. Your soul is somewhere 3 miles back next to a tree you accidentally headbutted on the way up the hill. Someone farts. You don't flinch. You made it. For now. You've marched. Your feet are blistered. Your soul has filed a formal complaint. Now it's time to line up like someone knows what they're doing. Spoiler, no one does. But you're going to stand there anyway, because yelling "why" in formation isn't allowed. You're awake. You're dressed. Your armor is on. Incorrectly, probably. Your boots are wet. Your legs hurt from marching. Your back hurts from sleeping on a rock that definitely had opinions. But congratulations, you are officially standing in a field, in a straightish line, with a few hundred other people who also don't know why they're here. And by straightish, we mean absolutely not straight at all. The concept is simple: formation, lines, columns, discipline. In theory, this looks clean and powerful. In reality, it's a jumbled mob of fidgeting humans elbowing each other while trying to remember which side the pointy end of the sword goes. Spoiler, it's not supposed to face you. You're told to form ranks. No one defines ranks. Everyone just does what the person in front of them is doing, which is mostly panicking in place. The formation shifts every few minutes, either due to last-minute orders, marching errors, or because some guy named Gerald keeps wandering off to find a P-rock. Your captain barks something unintelligible. Everyone freezes, then looks at each other for a clue. It was either raise arms, or brace yourselves, or possibly, Bernard, stop eating. Either way, there's movement. Shields clunk, weapons wave, armor squeals. It sounds like a dying pig orchestra. You're gripping your weapon, which still feels unnatural. It's too heavy on one side, slightly sticky from yesterday's stew spill, and you're 75% sure the hilt has fleas. You give it a practice swing. It catches on your neighbor's tabard. He glares. You nod apologetically. No one speaks. Time passes. Nothing happens. You adjust your helmet. It's too tight. It pinches your temple, making your thoughts echo weirdly in your own skull. When you turn your head, it creaks like an old door and squeaks like an embarrassed mouse. The captain rides up on horseback, shouting about unity, honor, and death. You wonder how he manages to look so confident with clean boots and no visible fear sweat. It's probably the horse. Horses make everything look cooler. You, meanwhile, are 80% mud and 20% rapidly eroding enthusiasm. A trumpet blares. Everyone flinches. Then nothing happens. It was apparently a practice blast. For morale. Your morale drops 2 more points. There's talk that the enemy is forming too, somewhere behind that hill, or in the tree line, or maybe they're invisible. Honestly, they might be smarter than you, waiting for your army to shuffle itself into a position so idiotic it defeats itself. A priest wanders by, mumbling blessings. You can't hear him over the clanking, but you nod solemnly anyway. It's good form. Plus, you might need that divine insurance later. Now someone's saying we're shifting 5 paces left. Why? Who knows? Orders. You shuffle. Everyone shuffles. A boot gets stepped on. A curse is muttered. A man named Giles falls over and takes 2 others with him. It's like dominoes with groaning. You stare ahead, trying to look brave. You fail. You look like someone holding in a fart while getting married at sword point. Across from you, Godfrey is carving something into his shield with a spoon. You don't ask. It's probably a saint or a potato, maybe both. Someone sneezes. Everyone panics for half a second. You wonder if the enemy heard it. You wonder if that's even bad. At this point, a surprise attack would be a welcome change of pace. You feel a trickle of sweat slide down your back. It takes the scenic route through your spine, across your waist, and settles unpleasantly somewhere unmentionable. You shudder. Not from fear, just general dampness. You look down the line. Some men are whispering, others are staring into space. One guy's praying, another is practicing his war face, which mostly looks like constipation mixed with spiritual doubt. A few yards away, a noble raises a banner. The wind is not cooperating. It flaps dramatically, then slaps him in the face. He pretends it didn't. We all pretend it didn't. Except Godfrey. Godfrey laughs. You recheck your gear. For the 5th time, everything is still there. Sword, shield, dagger, small rock with mysterious purpose. You don't remember packing it. You decide it's lucky. Suddenly, your name is called. You jolt. It's the captain, mispronouncing it spectacularly. He asks if your unit is ready. You nod with forced confidence. He nods back, clearly unconvinced, and gallops away before you can disappoint him further. A fly lands on your nose. You go cross-eyed trying to see it. You try to shake it off without moving your hands. You fail. You swat at it, knock your helmet sideways, and nearly drop your sword. You recover. Barely. No one saw, except Godfrey. He's still laughing. Another order comes, louder this time. Hold steady! Which is hilarious, because that's all you've been doing for the last hour. You're steadier than a monk in a staring contest. The sun climbs higher. The air thickens. Somewhere in the distance, someone screams. You all tense. Turns out it was just Bernard stepping on a nail. Again. He's having a rough war. The smell is impressive. A complex bouquet of iron, leather, nervous sweat, and digestive rebellion. You breathe shallowly and try not to think about the guy 3 rows up who hasn't moved since sunrise. Eventually the signal comes. Prepare! You lift your shield. You grip your sword. You exhale dramatically, hoping it looks heroic. It doesn't. You look like a man trying to hide his own panic behind a lunch tray and a stick. And then, you wait again. Because of course you do. The actual start of battle is still moments away. A medieval unit of time, meaning at some point before the sun dies. Someone drops their spear. It clatters. Everyone jumps. The captain sighs audibly. The soldier picks it up and whispers to it like it betrayed him. You take a deep breath. You look around. And you realize no one knows what they're doing. Not really. Not the guy next to you. Not the captain. Definitely not the noble who's sweating through his silk tabard. You're all just here. Standing in the mud. Pretending this makes sense. Pretending you're ready. Pretending you're not already halfway to screaming. And yet, you're here. Which is something. Even if the formation isn't. The waiting is over. The confusion continues. Now the horns are blowing, people are screaming, and your bladder is making some very sudden decisions. Welcome to the first charge, where battle meets blind chaos, and you're right in the middle of it. It begins with a sound. A trumpet blares, a nasal, shrieking, off-key wail that sounds like someone trying to strangle a goose with a trombone. It's the signal. The one you've been dreading since you woke up in a field next to Godfrey and his snoring that doubled as pest control. You brace. Everyone around you tenses. Eyes wide, mouths dry, backs clenched. And then someone yells, "Charge!" And that's it. There's no grand speech, no for glory moment, no dramatic slow motion, just the immediate, terrifying realization that the entire line has started moving forward. And if you don't go with them, you'll be trampled by 20 rows of sweaty men holding pointy things. You run, or stumble, or half jog in a kind of terrified power walk. The battlefield is a sloping mess of churned up grass, discarded gear, and the silent screams of 1,000 stomachs turning inside out. It smells like wet dog, stale beer, old bread, and something that might once have been cheese, but is now best described as a biohazard. Your first few steps are adrenaline-fueled. Your last few are a mix of blind panic and deep personal regret. And then there they are, the enemy. You expected rows, ranks, shining armor, men with noble gazes and stern brows. What you get is a crowd of men who look exactly like you, confused, sweaty, and already regretting all their life decisions. The two groups crash like waves of meat, bone, and disorganized shouting. Your sword hits something. It might be a shield. It might be someone's helmet. It might have been the air. Either way, your arm jolts from the impact. You scream. The man in front of you screams louder. You both pause, startled, and then someone else knocks into you, and the moment's gone. Chaos. That's the only word for it. It's not battle. It's a kinetic disaster. An accidental mosh pit for angry farmers cosplaying as soldiers. There's no form, no strategy, just slashing, blocking, shoving, ducking, and praying you're hitting the right team. Your shield is up. Sometimes. Other times it's behind you for reasons you can't explain. You take a hit to the shoulder. You feel it. You don't react. There's no time. You duck another blow. It misses. You try to respond with a heroic counterstrike and accidentally drop your sword. Panic. You dive for it like it's the last sausage at a feast. Fingers wrap around the hilt. You swing from the ground and clip a man's knee. He falls over you and you both go down like medieval bowling pins. You groan. He groans louder. You both nod, apologize, and crawl in opposite directions. You can't hear anything clearly. Just noise. Clanging, screaming, horns, the clatter of hooves, the horrible, unending sound of dozens of people finding out just how sharp, not very sharp, can still be when applied with enough fear and momentum. Someone yells your name. You look up. It's not your name. They're yelling, "Raise the banner!" But your name is apparently close enough to banner in the heat of combat. You nod out of instinct, then immediately duck because someone swings an axe the size of a bookshelf over your head. You scurry sideways. You're not fighting anymore. You're just surviving. Mud sprays up. Blood too. You can't tell what's what anymore. Your legs are covered. You slip. You fall. You get up. You fall again. Someone offers a hand. You take it. He gets shot with an arrow mid-help. You scream. He shrugs and keeps going. You make a note to buy him a beer, if either of you survive. A horse charges past. You barely dodge the hooves. The knight on top is screaming something that might be Latin. He looks heroic. Then someone throws a rock at his face and he goes down like a majestic sack of potatoes. You consider looting his armor, but immediately get tackled by a bearded man with breath like boiled onions. You wrestle, kind of. It's more like aggressive hugging in full gear. Eventually you both agree to roll away and never speak of it again. At one point, you're holding a spear that doesn't belong to you, next to a man you've never seen before, both facing a direction that is definitely not forward. You spin. You realize the line has shifted, or broken, or vanished. You're alone. For 4 terrifying seconds, you consider hiding under a corpse and waiting for peace to break out. Then someone else does exactly that, badly, and gets stomped on by a rider. You decide to keep fighting. Sort of. You mostly wave your sword in intimidating arcs and shout vague threats. It seems to work. A few enemies avoid you, or pity you. Either way, success. A man charges you with a club. You panic. You throw your shield. It hits him square in the chest. He stops, confused. You both stare at each other. Then he gets tackled by someone else, and you run, sobbing quietly, from a combination of terror, relief, and the growing pain in your left thigh. You regroup near a wagon. It's on fire. You stand behind it anyway. It feels safe. You take a breath. You can't remember the last one. Your chest is heaving. Your vision is blurry. Your arms are jelly. You wipe your face. Blood, sweat, someone else's snot. Who knows? You lock eyes with Godfrey. He looks how you feel. Done. His helmet is cracked. His shield is gone. He's holding a stick. Not a spear, just a stick. He shrugs. You both laugh. It's the kind of laugh that borders on weeping. A new order is shouted. Push forward! You both groan. You shuffle forward, like condemned men walking toward an unsupervised trebuchet. It's not a charge. It's a defeated stagger. You clash again. Less forceful this time. More resigned. You parry a weak swing. Your counter hits someone's helmet. They fall. You feel powerful for half a second. Then a javelin lands next to your foot and you remember. You're mortal. Very mortal. Your legs are numb. Your hands hurt. Your teeth rattle. Your ears ring. The sky is spinning. Or maybe your helmet's just on crooked again. You stab. You push. You trip. You curse. You survive. Just barely. Eventually the noise fades. Not all at once. Slowly. Like a tavern brawl where everyone's finally too drunk to keep swinging. You look around. The field is bodies and ash. Shields splintered. Swords bent. Men sitting, staring, sobbing, laughing, praying. It's over. The charge, the glorious, noble, beautiful charge, was a disaster. And you lived through it. Somehow. You're not proud. You're not even sure what side won. But you're still breathing. And in war, that counts as victory. You've survived the charge. Sort of. You're bruised, breathless, and may or may not have someone's spleen on your boot. Let's talk about what dying really looks like on the battlefield. Hint, it's less noble sacrifice and more muddy, messy screaming. Let's kill the fantasy right here. Medieval battlefield, death is not noble. It is not a slow-motion fall onto polished marble with your best friend cradling your head and whispering something poetic about honor. No. It is someone screaming, "Oh God, my leg!" followed by someone else saying, "Where's his leg?" And then silence, punctuated by a splattering noise and a goat urinating in the background. You don't die with dignity. You die with mud in your mouth, a dent in your helmet, and a confused expression like someone just told you your pants are on fire. Which, incidentally, they might be. You don't go out whispering a final message to your loved ones. You go out choking on your own blood while someone runs over your corpse in the wrong direction because they forgot where the front line was. You could be a hero. You could have been the bravest soul on the battlefield. But if you trip, fall into a ditch, and get accidentally stabbed by a guy trying to scratch his back with a halberd, that's your story now. Forever. Your heroic legacy, reduced to a cautionary tale about walking too close to Guy, with terrible weapon awareness. Let's talk methods of death. The sword is the celebrity. Everyone talks about swords. But swords rarely kill cleanly. More often than not, they bounce, scrape, or lodge halfway into you, leaving you gurgling and contemplating every poor decision that led to this moment. Maces? Oh, maces are the real nightmare. Not pointy, not sharp, just brute force trauma straight to the skull. You don't bleed right away. You just collapse, twitching, with your brain doing a slow cartwheel inside your head. If you're lucky, the second hit finishes the job. If not, welcome to an afternoon of excruciating confusion before the lights go out for good. And arrows, romanticized nonsense. Archery is impersonal, indifferent. You don't even see it coming. You're just standing there, thinking about bread or blisters, and then bam, a shaft in your kidney. You drop. You try to breathe. You fail. You make a sound like an accordion being stepped on. The end. Then there's the accidental deaths. Those are plentiful, trampled by your own side, slipping on a blood-slick rock and cracking your skull. One guy in history got kicked in the chest by a panicking goat and died 3 hours later from internal bleeding. Nobody wrote songs about him. Also popular, friendly fire. Your friend gets excited, spins too fast and clubs you in the neck with his flail. He doesn't notice. You die making eye contact with the guy you shared stew with 2 hours ago. He never even says sorry. Let's not forget the post-battle deaths, the ones where you didn't technically die in the fight, but wish you had. You take a spear to the gut. It doesn't kill you right away. No, it gives you 2 to 3 delightful days of searing, festering pain, while your innards politely leak into your tunic. If you're high-ranking, a surgeon might try to remove it with unwashed tools and hope. If you're not, they just leave you in a hut and tell you to pray louder. And then there's fire. You're not even in the fight. You're 10 feet back holding a spear, wondering why everything smells like cheese. Suddenly, a wagon explodes because someone packed it with hay, oil, and hope. Now you're rolling on the ground, screaming, while some guy yells, "Put him out with your cloak," and another yells, "Save the beer." A surprising number of men die from bleeding. Slowly, pathetically. One cut, not even deep, just in the wrong place. It leaks. You notice it too late. You tie a rag around it. You keep fighting. Then later, you feel cold. You sit down. And that's it. No drama, no song, just gone. If you think that's bad, try getting disemboweled. There's no bounce back from that. You feel it. You see it. You scream things that haven't even been invented yet. You beg. Someone tries to comfort you. You bite them. It's a whole thing. Still not convinced? Let's talk sounds. Medieval dying sounds are not noble. They are not majestic. They are mostly gasps, gurgles, sputters, and wet, flapping wheezes. It's like someone tried to drown a bagpipe in a bucket of soup. There's also crying, lots of crying. Not just from the dying either. Sometimes the people nearby. Sometimes the men doing the killing. War breaks people. On every side. And smell? We never talk about the smell. Blood, urine, feces, burnt hair, fear, lots of that. It hangs in the air like a ghost no one invited. You can taste it. It becomes part of your nostrils. It follows you long after death. Or so say the survivors, the rare, unlucky few. Speaking of which, survivors aren't always better off. Maybe you get dragged away, patched up, and spend 6 months with your leg rotting slowly from the knee down. Or you recover, kind of, but now you scream at shadows, flinch at birds, and soil yourself every time someone bangs a pot. Some people don't even realize they're dying. They stumble around, dazed, blood gushing from a place they can't see. They ask you what's going on. You can't answer, because their eye is dangling off their cheek and their mouth is full of their own teeth. Death doesn't respect choreography. You don't die in the right pose. You die face down in mud, or face up with your mouth open in a scream that never stops. You die with your pants half down, or your arm twisted behind your back, or your head at an angle only birds find interesting. And after you die, well, nothing gets cleaner. You're looted. If you had anything shiny, it's gone. Your shoes? Gone. Your armor? Peeled off like a banana. If you're lucky, someone rolls you into a ditch. If not, you get left in the open for days. Flies, dogs, birds, rain. Maybe your buddy covers your face. Maybe he doesn't. In the grand scheme of things, you are one more body on the field. A statistic. Another soul fed to the hunger of politics and pride. But hey, maybe someone writes a song. Maybe someone remembers you. Maybe they get your name right. Maybe your helmet ends up on a wall somewhere, and a kid asks, "Who was this?" And someone says, "I don't know, but he fought." And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Somehow, you didn't die. You probably should have. But now you're dealing with the next level of horror, being alive and injured. Time to meet medieval field medicine, a thrilling combination of yelling, praying, and mild limb loss. You're not dead, somehow. You've made it past the pointy sticks and the random fire and the man named Godfrey who tripped, fell, and bayoneted your thigh by accident while trying to catch his balance. Congratulations. You're wounded, not fatally, but just enough to become someone else's problem. The first thing you notice is the pain. The second thing you notice is the pain again, but louder. The third is the smell. Something has opened inside you, and it does not smell like future victory. It smells like meat left out during a thunderstorm, shame, and spoiled barley soup. You glance down and confirm that your leg is not supposed to be at that angle. Good to know. People are running around you, not to help, just to avoid you. That man with the mustache? He looked directly into your eyes and kept walking. You yell something between a scream and a whimper. Someone hears, or thinks they do. Soon enough, a medic stumbles into view. Medic is a strong word. He's a man holding a knife, a prayer book, and the kind of grin that says, "I haven't slept in 3 days." He squats beside you, pokes the wound once with a stick, then nods thoughtfully, as if he's reading a wine label. "Looks nasty," he mutters. You want to scream, "No kidding," but you just sort of weep through clenched teeth. "Let's have a look." He tears your trouser leg open with something resembling a fish hook. You get a brief, shocking glimpse of your own muscle, which appears to be leaking. "You'll live," he says cheerfully. "We just need to stop the bleeding, say a prayer, and maybe cauterize it." Cauterize. The word bounces around your skull like a cursed echo. He pulls a metal rod from the fire, glowing red and sizzling like it's auditioning to be your personal hell. 2 men hold you down. One is crying. You're not sure if it's for you or himself. The medic presses the brand into your leg, and suddenly, everything is light and screaming, and you are no longer on this earth. You are floating above it, watching your own mouth howl like a medieval banshee. Then it's over. Sort of. The pain is still there, like someone set fire to your soul and then apologized with vinegar. But the bleeding has stopped. Progress. They wrap the wound in cloth. Not clean cloth, just cloth. From where? You don't want to ask. Probably reused from that guy who died yesterday. It's stiff, crunchy, possibly sentient. It sticks to the wound like an angry bandage with abandonment issues. You're dragged, elegantly, like a sack of onions, to the triage area. Triage is a fancy term for a field of screaming people lying on straw with rats doing laps between them. You're plopped down next to a man missing an eye and another man missing his optimism. Neither speaks. One of them might be dead. You're too polite to ask. Welcome to medieval recovery. You get a bowl of something. It's warm, vaguely brown, and allegedly soup. You sip it. It's not soup. It's regret in liquid form. You eat it anyway, because you're too weak to protest and too polite to throw it at the monk who brought it. There's no anesthesia, no antibiotics, no antiseptic, just prayers, wine, herbs, and the overwhelming hope that you're not allergic to moss. The priest walks by, sprinkles holy water, and mutters a Latin phrase that might be healing, or might be a dinner blessing. Either way, nothing happens. You still hurt. You still bleed. You still wish someone would invent morphine and central heating. Your leg festers. That's the word. Festers. It swells. It throbs. It smells worse than Godfrey after a rainstorm. A swarm of flies sets up camp nearby. One lands on your tongue. You cry. Quietly. Dignity has long since packed up and left. Someone next to you dies. No one notices until the smell improves. He's quietly dragged away and replaced by a new arrival. A man with a broken arm and a suspiciously positive attitude. You hate him immediately. The doctor, again using that word lightly, comes back and declares your wound moist but manageable. This is somehow supposed to be comforting. He applies a poultice made of crushed garlic, honey, pig fat, and what you're almost sure is something he found on the bottom of his shoe. It stings. It doesn't work. You endure. Days pass, or hours. Time is a meaningless blur. The rats grow bold. One tries to nibble your bandage. You threaten it. It doesn't flinch. Eventually, someone throws a boot, and the rat wanders off in search of easier meat. Your fever spikes. You hallucinate. You see your mother, then your horse giving you advice about tax reform. You weep, not from fear, from confusion. You make a full speech about apples. The priest writes it down, calls it prophecy, and then, somehow, you stabilize. Your fever drops, the wound scabs. You're able to lift your leg without vomiting. Someone gives you a crust of bread. You cry again, this time from joy. You still can't walk, but now you can hop, like an injured goose. It's dignity adjacent. Eventually, you're mobile. Sort of. You limp with style. You lean on a stick that may or may not be a javelin. You return to camp. People pat your shoulder. They say, "You made it," as if you didn't just lose a small portion of your soul and one whole toe to the collective horror of medieval medicine. You are now a survivor. You don't feel heroic. You feel hollow, exhausted, slightly haunted, but you're alive, which in this era is basically sainthood. Someone suggests you get back to training. You laugh. Then you remember laughter hurts and you stop immediately. Congratulations, you've joined the ranks of the semi-functional wounded. You'll walk with a limp, groan in your sleep, and twitch whenever you hear the word cauterize. But hey, you're not dead. And that's what passes for a happy ending in the Middle Ages. You're stitched, bandaged, or just held together with twine and denial. But guess what? Your side won, apparently. That means celebration, looting, and a collective realization that nobody feels particularly victorious. So you won, which, in medieval terms, means the enemy left the field before you did. Not because they were vanquished in some noble display of swordsmanship, but because half of them were on fire, the other half were fleeing for their lives, and someone's war goat got loose and caused a stampede. Congratulations, champ. You're now a survivor of a glorious victory. How does it feel? If you're expecting a celebration, think again. There's no roaring crowd, no patriotic ballads, no horse lifting its hooves in triumph. There's just the battlefield, quiet, steaming, and gently buzzing with flies. The smell is somewhere between wet fur, burnt stew, and despair. The only thing more abundant than the blood is the sudden realization that you can't remember why you were fighting in the first place. The first order of post-battle business? Looting, not healing, not reflecting, not even washing your face. No, it's rifling through corpses and trying to find anything useful or not soaked in blood. You're not alone. Everyone is doing it. Even that guy with the arrow through his shoulder is using his good arm to yank boots off a dead soldier, like he's shopping at the world's worst yard sale. And let's talk about the looting haul. Spoiler alert, it sucks. Turns out, victory doesn't come with a treasure chest or a loot drop. What you get instead is a haunted buffet of sadness. Most of what you find is either broken, soaked in someone else's bodily fluids, or so cursed it practically whispers threats when you touch it. That sword lying gleaming in the mud, snapped in half, rusted at the handle, and currently embedded in a guy's clavicle. Technically he's dead. Probably. But you don't really want to test it. That bag of coins you saw a guy clutching during the fight, you pry it loose from his rigor mortis grip, only to find it's filled with pebbles, chicken bones, and a mouldy turnip that's somehow both squishy and sharp. You eat around the edges later anyway. Boots. That's what you really need. Yours fell apart 2 villages ago, and now consist mostly of hope and a few threads. You spot a pair sticking out from under a collapsed archer. One boot's a size too small, and the other has something squishy in it that pulses slightly when you step. You put them on without question. You've lost the right to be picky. Besides, foot fungus builds character. Others are looting too. Some are looking for valuables. Some are looking for food. One man is collecting ears. Just ears. No one asks why. He has a whole pouch full of them, and a grin that suggests he knows something the rest of you don't. Or that he's fully given up on sanity, and is now auditioning for a nightmare. Trade erupts in pockets of the field like pop-up flea markets of doom. A bloody glove is exchanged for a copper ring that might just be a deformed button. A cracked helm is swapped for a hunk of stale bread, shaped like disappointment. One guy offers a belt buckle in exchange for a single sock. The sock has holes. The deal still goes through. Someone's dragging a half-burned tapestry across the field like it's a sacred relic. Another is trying to use a severed hand to open a wooden box. The box is empty. The hand is not. Everything smells like victory. If victory smelled like blood, wet fur, and emotional baggage. A noble rides by on his white horse. The horse, perfectly groomed. The noble, spotless, every hair in place like he didn't just spend the morning screaming from a safe hilltop. He surveys the battlefield like he's admiring a painting. Mud doesn't register. You look up at him with one eye, because the other one's swollen shut, and cough blood into your tunic. The noble doesn't flinch. He's probably never seen real blood, just the kind used in pageants and royal theatre. You nod. Slowly. Triumph indeed. Somewhere nearby, a man is trying to fit a bent helmet over his head, like it's a prize crown. Another guy is debating whether to pry a ring off a corpse's finger, or just take the whole hand to save time. A kid, too young to be here, is dragging a broken shield twice his size, like it's going to protect him from what comes next. And you? You pick up a spoon, A bent one, covered in ash and possibly brains. You stare at it. It stares back. You pocket it. Could be useful. Could be symbolic. Hard to tell anymore. This is the aftermath. Not a parade, not a song. Just mud, pain, and a collection of objects too damaged to be useful and too bloodstained to be thrown away. But you gather them anyway, because somehow this is what winning looks like. Then comes the part they never sing about in taverns, dealing with the bodies. Dead soldiers are everywhere. Some are face down in mud. Others are contorted in ways that make you question physics. The task is grim. Gather them, pile them, burn them. You start with strangers. Then it gets worse. You find someone you know, someone you joked with yesterday, someone who lent you their last piece of bread. You try not to cry. You fail quietly. The fires are lit. Smoke fills the air. It clings to your skin, gets in your mouth, coats your lungs in something darker than ash. A priest chants a prayer. It's supposed to bring peace. It mostly brings coughing fits. You throw on another log. You can't look away. Once the worst of it is handled, or at least concealed by smoke, it's back to camp, or what's left of it. Tents are torn, gear is missing, and the stew pot has been commandeered by a man boiling his socks. It smells ambitious. Still, people try to celebrate. There's a half-hearted attempt at singing. A drunk man tries to dance, falls over, and throws up into his helmet. Someone toasts with wine that tastes like it was aged in a goat's bladder. It's not joy. It's survival cosplay. You find a place to sit. A rock, a log, a heap of your own emotional baggage, and take inventory of your body. Cuts, yes. Bruises, everywhere. Pride, somewhere between non-existent and currently hiding under a dead horse. You pick at your bread ration and pretend it doesn't taste like sadness. Later, you're summoned for a roll call. The squire doing the names is 12 years old and crying. Half the names he reads out don't respond. Some never will. Others are too injured to care. You raise your hand when yours is called. Barely. It still counts. The captain congratulates those present. He calls you heroes. You nod. No one corrects him. It's easier than explaining what really happened. The crying, the panic, the moment you dropped your sword and kicked someone in the shin because it was faster. Someone asks what happens next. The captain says there's another battle ahead. Another cause. Another town full of people who also didn't ask for this war. He says it like it's good news. No one cheers. You try to sleep that night. Your straw bed feels like it's stuffed with gravel and emotional damage. The wind howls. The stars are too bright. Your neighbor snores like a dying bear. And you keep hearing the screams from earlier, like they're stitched into your eardrums. Eventually, you doze. You dream of peace and turnips. And then the dream shifts, and you're back on the battlefield, stuck in the mud, your sword made of bread, and your feet running but going nowhere. You wake up to your leg being used as a pillow. You shove Godfrey off it. Morning comes. You think it might feel better. It doesn't. The sun rises over a charred field, and it's somehow more depressing than moonlight. You eat a cold root and pretend it's porridge. Your stomach doesn't agree. A message arrives. Orders to march. New orders. New enemy. Same you. You sling your gear over your back, most of it borrowed, all of it uncomfortable, and follow the line of broken bodies pretending to be soldiers. You walk forward, not because of loyalty or courage, but because stopping feels worse. And that's what victory looks like. Not medals, not songs, just surviving long enough to do it all again. Victory smells like rot, literally, because now the real suffering begins. Infection, amputations, and watching your friends turn into cautionary tales. This is what passes for post-battle recovery, when your doctor thinks pus is a good sign. The battle is over. The looting's done. The banners have been waved. The priests have prayed. And now begins the real horror. Recovery. Not for your soul. That's gone. We're talking about your body. The bruised, broken, and increasingly aromatic thing you still inhabit. Welcome to medieval post-battle medicine, a fun-filled journey of rot, rash, and random limb removal. You wake up to the smell of your own leg, which now resembles a half-boiled sausage someone dropped behind a tavern. It's black in spots, green in others. There's a buzzing sound nearby. Is it flies? Is it your imagination? Unclear. But either way, the verdict is in. Your leg is trying to quit the team. Your best friend, Ulrich, isn't doing much better. He took a mace to the ribs and now wheezes like a haunted accordion every time he breathes. You offer him water. He coughs. There's blood. He thanks you anyway. It's the most affection anyone's shown in weeks. The camp surgeon arrives, and by surgeon, we mean guy who owns a knife and isn't afraid to use it. He's cheerful, too cheerful. That's always a bad sign. He looks at Ulrich, taps his side, listens for gurgling, nods grimly. He'll be dead by evening, he says, then walks away to ruin someone else's day. You don't even have time to process that, because now he's looking at your leg. Let's have a look, he says brightly, as if inspecting a loaf of bread. He peels back your bandage. You smell it before you see it. It's the aroma of cheese left in the sun, and possibly vengeance. He pokes your thigh. It jiggles. That's not supposed to happen. You'll live, he says. Probably, but we might have to take it. Take what? He means your leg. Cue internal screaming. You ask if it's really necessary. He shrugs. Could rot more, could rot less, but once it turns black and your pee starts to smell like mushrooms, we don't wait. You ask what the procedure involves. He tells you. You regret asking. First, you'll be held down, usually by 2 to 4 extremely nervous-looking men with poor hygiene. Then your limb is cleaned with wine. Not because it's sterile, but because it's the only thing strong enough to make you pass out if you drink enough of it. Next, he'll use a saw. A literal saw. Woodworkers use it. Now it's your turn. No anesthesia? You ask. He chuckles. You're adorable. The good news is, it'll be fast. The bad news is everything else. You look at Ulrich. He's sleeping now, or unconscious. You can't tell. You decide to wait. Over the next few days, the infection festers. Your leg pulses like it has its own heartbeat. You name it regret. Ulrich deteriorates too. He starts mumbling about a goose he once loved. You hold his hand. He dies at dawn. You don't cry right away. You just sit there, staring at your own foot like it's next. They bury Ulrich in a shallow grave. No headstone, just a boot nailed to a stick. It's the closest thing to closure anyone gets out here. Someone says a few words. Someone else sneezes into the wind. Then it's over. You're alone again. Days blur. Time passes in twitches. The wound gets worse, or maybe it's healing. Hard to say. Every now and then, someone pours more wine over it and tells you not to scream so loud. It attracts wolves. You apologize to no one in particular. Eventually, the surgeon comes back. He gives you options. Option 1, wait and hope your leg doesn't kill you. Option 2, chop it off now and get a head start on the healing. Option 3, die nobly in silence. Option 4, cry and hope that counts as a cure. You pick option 1. Hope is the only thing you haven't bled out yet. Around you, others aren't so lucky. A man loses 3 fingers after they swell up like boiled sausages. Another gets bit by something. Now he talks to his thumb like it's a small king. A woman's eye bursts. No one knows why. The priest shrugs and says, God's plan. Comforting. You try not to think. Thinking leads to remembering. Remembering leads to screaming. You distract yourself by counting the scabs on your arm. You name them. One is called Bernard. You hate him. Someone nearby starts a game called Who Can Smell Themselves First? It ends when the winner throws up and faints. A rat walks over his face. No one stops it. We've all accepted the rats now. Morale is non-existent. Food is crusty bread, and something that used to be soup, but is now more of a thick emotional paste. You eat it anyway. Your standards are gone. You miss flavor. You miss warm things. You miss anything other than this. At one point you try to walk. Bad idea. Your leg buckles. You fall face first into the mud. You lie there for an hour, pretending the earth is hugging you. It's the only affection you've had in weeks. At night, the screams return. Some are physical, some are psychological, some are goats. You're not sure anymore. The fire crackles. You hold your breath. You dream of walking. You wake up to more rot. Eventually, someone says you've turned the corner. You don't feel it, but the leg isn't leaking anymore. That's progress. You name it mostly regret now. You learn to hobble. You carve a crutch out of a broken pike. You join the others in the half-wounded corner of camp, a place where jokes go to die. Someone starts drawing faces on their scabs. Someone else writes a song called Please Kill Me, God. It's catchy, but then, one morning, you wake up and don't hate the sun. Your leg aches, but it doesn't throb. Your crutch doesn't squeak. You look at the tree you've been using as a urinal for 2 weeks and feel gratitude. You survived. You're still here. Ulrich isn't. Neither are a dozen others. But you are, and that counts for something. You limp over to the mess tent. A bird chirps. You whisper, "Not today, Satan." You eat your paste soup with dignity. You spit out the beetle and keep going. You're alive. Barely. Broken. Rotten. Rebuilt. But alive. And that's enough. The wounds have closed. Mostly. The nightmares have settled into a manageable rhythm. And now, it's time to limp back home. To see what's left of your village, your sanity, and possibly your outhouse. You're going home. Or at least, that's the plan. What's home anyway? A thatched roof, a suspicious goat, and a woman who maybe remembers you. Or maybe she remarried your cousin. Hard to say. You've been gone for a year, or maybe 2. Time stopped keeping track after the 4th frostbite scare and the 3rd battle where someone mistook you for a corpse. You walk with a limp now, or rather, a series of uncoordinated hops supported by a wooden stick, someone whittled while high on mead and trauma. Your leg still itches in places it shouldn't. Your back clicks when you blink too fast. Your shoulder randomly dislocates when the wind changes direction. But hey, you're breathing. That's something. The road home is long, muddy, and suspiciously uphill in both directions. You meet other survivors on the way. Some are walking, some are crawling. One guy is riding a stolen ox, crying and singing about soup. No one questions him. We all heal in different ways. You pass villages you don't recognize, burned out husks, empty huts. One place has been turned into a plague shrine. Another is now mostly cows. It's hard to tell if the war passed through, or if people just gave up and let nature reclaim it. You try to imagine what home will be like. Your old cot, your neighbor with the uncontrollable sneezing, that one pig that always looked at you like it knew your secrets. But something inside says it won't feel the same, that something inside you didn't come back. Eventually you see it, your village, smaller than you remember, quieter. There's smoke rising from chimneys, which feels like a miracle. Someone's yelling about turnips. Another person is swatting at chickens with a stick. Okay, maybe some things haven't changed. You limp through the gate. No one cheers. No one notices. You're just another smelly figure wrapped in damp wool and haunted eyes. You make it to your house, or the space where your house used to be. It's there. Technically, half the roof is gone. A wall is held up by a wheelbarrow. The door is open and swinging like it's considering leaving entirely. Inside, it's cold and dust-covered. You set your pack down and sit. The silence is heavier than your sword used to be. You look at the floor. It doesn't look back. That's progress. A neighbor stops by. She gasps when she sees you. "We thought you died," she says. You nod. "So did I." She leaves a loaf of bread and a suspicious hug. You cry, but not too hard. It's still a small village. People talk. Word spreads. Slowly, like a rumor trying not to trip over its own feet. People drop by one to see if it's true. That you're back. That you're alive. That the guy who left hobbling and wide-eyed actually made it home without being turned into a pile of ashes or an inspirational cautionary tale. They stand in your doorway awkwardly, holding baskets and trying not to stare at your limp. They ask about the war. Their voices are cautious, like maybe if they say it too loud, the war will come bursting through the walls again. You tell them the truth, or a version of it. Mud, blood, bad soup, screaming, more screaming, then silence. That strange, heavy silence that comes after a man dies, but before anyone acknowledges it. You tell them about the smell, how it crawled into your nostrils and stayed. About the sky, how it never looked blue again once you saw it through a haze of fire and smoke. You pause. They don't know what to say, so they nod. One person gives you a loaf of bread shaped like a rock. Another hands you a bundle of wild herbs and mutters something about healing energy. Most of them bring eggs, lots of eggs. It's weird, but eggs are good. You accept them all like gifts from a confused pantheon. One lady brings a duck, no explanation, just leaves it tied to your fence. You name him Reginald. Your body begins to recover, slowly, painfully, like a reluctant mule being dragged uphill by invisible ropes. You relearn how to stand up without your knees sounding like a bag of sticks. You walk 10 steps without groaning, then 12, then 15, and a heroic collapse into your front door. You stop waking up in a cold sweat every night. Just every other night. Progress. Sometimes you lie awake listening to your own breath, just to make sure you're still real. The rats in your house become roommates. You name them. Bernard is the smart one. He once brought you a beetle and looked smug about it. Clarissa likes to nap in your boots. Geraldine stares at you when you cry. Judgmental, but silent. They keep you company, which is more than you can say for some of the villagers who now avoid you like you're contagious with ghost memories. You try farming again. It's what you did before, and it seems safe. Familiar. Dirt doesn't scream, usually, but your back protests immediately. Your legs protest louder. Your shoulders revolt. You grip a hoe and realize your hands have forgotten how to hold tools that don't draw blood. You dig 3 feet, maybe 4, before collapsing in a heap and sobbing into the soil like it owes you a refund for existing. A goose watches you from a few feet away, unimpressed. You throw a turnip at it. You miss. It hisses and waddles off like it's better than you. It is. The worst part isn't the pain, or the limp, or even the memories. It's the stillness. In battle, everything moved, everything screamed. There was chaos, fire, horses, shouting, death, and more shouting layered over top of the first shouting. There was adrenaline, terror, momentum. There was always something to react to. And now, there's nothing. Just quiet. Too much quiet. The wind through the trees, the rustle of straw, the distant cough of a neighbor, the soft creak of your joints, the occasional whimper you let slip when you remember Ulrich, and Brandt, and Godfrey, who said he'd meet you at the hilltop, but never made it past the pit of arrows. You think about their faces, not the way they lived, but the way they died, and how you had to step over them because someone behind you was still yelling forward. Sometimes, at night, you catch yourself whispering the names of the fallen, like roll call, as if saying them aloud might keep them from fading. Ulrich, Brandt, Godfrey, Elwyn, Thomas, that kid with the stutter who never even made it to the front line. You whisper their names into the straw mattress, into the dark rafters, into the silence. One day, the local priest asks if you'll give a talk to the children about the glory of battle. You laugh so hard you cough up blood. The children are frightened. The priest does not ask again. You have nightmares. Of course you do. Sometimes it's the screaming. Sometimes it's the quiet. Sometimes it's that one guy whose face caved in like a rotten melon. You never learned his name. You see him every night. There are good days, rare, but real. Days when your leg doesn't scream, when the fire actually stays lit, when a neighbor smiles at you and doesn't look afraid. You cling to those days like a drowning man clings to a log. Sometimes you even laugh. It sounds foreign, like someone else is doing it. You hear talk of more war, distant, but approaching. Some young men are training. You want to scream. You want to grab them and say, "Don't." But they're like you once were, eager, stupid, and dreaming of honor. You sit by the fire that night and talk to Bernard the rat. He seems to understand. Or he's just hungry. Some days you think about leaving, starting over, moving to a city, pretending to be a tanner or a monk. But then you remember how hard it is to walk, and that no one wants a veteran with more scars than teeth. So you stay, you mend your roof, you grow bad carrots, you trade eggs for wool, you live, and every now and then someone passes by and asks, "Did you fight at Grey Hollow?" Or, "Were you at the Battle of the Screaming Field?" And you nod. They ask what it was like. You think. Then you say, loud. And that's enough. You made it home. You survived the mud, blood, and memories. But now comes the final insult. How people will remember it. Poets will sing. Monuments will rise. and none of them will mention the part where you slipped on a guy's intestine. The bards always show up late, not for the fighting. Oh no, they're allergic to swords and slightly damp weather. But 2 weeks after the battle ends, and the last body has been shoved into a ditch with a polite prayer and a kicked clump of dirt, here they come, strutting into the village with lutes in hand and metaphors leaking from their mouths like bad ale from a cracked mug. They're here to immortalize you, to turn your screams into sonnets, to make your open wound a symbol of sacrifice instead of what it actually is, a breeding ground for flies and anxiety. One of them corners you outside the communal latrine, of all places, and asks, "What did it feel like to fight for honor?" You blink. You were just trying not to soil yourself, and failing in some moments. You open your mouth, then close it again. Eventually you manage, loud. He nods solemnly and writes down something about the roar of courage. Later, you overhear the first draft of his ballad. It includes words like glorious, unstoppable, and hero. It even rhymes. You're impressed until you realize the main event of the song is the moment you slipped on a puddle of someone's organs, flailed wildly, and accidentally impaled an enemy commander while trying to balance yourself with your spear. To be fair, it was impressive, but not for the reasons he thinks. They don't write songs about the man who got trampled by his own horse, or the one who died of fright before the fighting even started. They don't mention the rats, or the diarrhea, or the part where you accidentally stabbed your own foot and screamed so loud a nearby crow fell out of a tree. They ask for your story again. "Tell us how it happened," a scribe says, quill poised like a weapon. You sigh. What do you say? That it was chaos? That you spent half the battle hiding behind a man named Godfrey, and the other half crawling away from a guy whose jaw was stuck to your boot? No, of course not. You say, it was fierce. He beams and writes, victory born of valiant fury. You don't correct him. There's no point. Then comes the memorial. The priest whose battlefield experience begins and ends with blister care gives a speech about divine destiny. He talks about the brave, the fallen, the chosen. You're not sure which one you are. You'd settle for still oozing. People come up to you afterward. They pat your shoulder. They say things like, "You're a hero." You smile, nod, clench your teeth. Later, one falls out. You tuck it into your pocket. It's your third this month. At the tavern, the bard plays your song. Everyone claps. You're mentioned by name. Apparently, you led the charge, rallied your comrades, held the line. The truth, you tripped over a chicken and accidentally knocked down a dozen people, like a bowling ball of despair. The only thing you held was your pants, because they tore mid-sprint and revealed more than your strategy. The ale is flowing. Someone's weeping. Someone else is singing along. You sit in the corner, sipping warm beer and trying not to look as confused as you feel. This is how it's remembered, and it's wrong. They say you were fearless. You remember your knees shaking so hard they sounded like castanets. You remember praying to 5 different gods, 2 of whom you invented in a panic. You remember offering your soul in exchange for socks that didn't have holes. They say you inspired courage. You remember the guy next to you who tried to desert and was tackled by a goat. They say you looked death in the eye and laughed. You remember looking death in the eye and saying, "Please no, I'm not even wearing clean underwear." But none of that fits in a poem. The songs want honor. You remember horror. The songs want steel and fire. You remember mud and blood and a man who screamed for his mother with his legs missing. You want to forget, but they want to remember, and they want to remember wrong. The worst part, you start believing it, just a little. When you hear the song for the 10th time, you begin to wonder, was it that bad? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the glory was real. Maybe the screams were someone else's. Maybe that wasn't a foot you stepped on. But then you go to sleep. And in your dreams, it's always real. The noise, the stink, the moment when you thought it was over and you were wrong. You wake up drenched in sweat, tangled in your blanket like a fish caught in despair. You sit by the fire the next day and listen to the bards sing. Children cheer. A pig walks by with a flower crown. No one knows why. It's surreal. A statue is unveiled. It's you. Or someone with a jawline much stronger than yours and arms like marble tree trunks. You don't recognize yourself. You wonder if anyone will. The plaque says Valiant Defender. You wonder if surprised screamer was taken. You see a young boy looking at the statue, eyes wide, inspired. He says, I want to be like him someday. You want to grab him and say, don't, but you don't. You smile and nod. It's the only thing you're good at now. In time, the war becomes a story, a memory, a song. Your limp becomes just another quirk. Your silence becomes wisdom. Your pain becomes poetry. And none of it is true. But somehow, that's what survives. Not the truth, not the stink, not the sobbing, the myth. So you sit quietly, and you listen, and you let them remember it wrong, because the truth is too ugly, too loud, too human, and people prefer statues. So, you made it, through mud, misery, minor dismemberment, and major disappointment. You've marched, bled, screamed, hallucinated, eaten suspicious stew, and questioned the meaning of life, all in the name of history, or at least what's left of it after the poets cleaned it up and slapped a statue on it. If you enjoyed this long, tragic stumble through the battlefield of brutal honesty, do the decent thing. Leave a comment, click like, and subscribe. Because nothing says, thank you for emotionally scarring me with medieval realism, like enabling more of it. And tell me, if you had to survive just one part of this medieval nightmare, which would you choose and why? The pottage? The plague? The random goat violence? And if you're still awake, congratulations. You've survived one more medieval trauma without the help of leeches. Until next time, sleep tight, dream of anything but 14th century warfare, and maybe appreciate your indoor plumbing just a little more.